And
but I hope it'll be okay.
on my computer, it just keeps going. It just sort of lines them up. It
Okay.
seems to stack them up, so that should be fine. So yes, Tim has always been working on the sort of metaphysical forefront, is how I see it in my mind. And I first became acquainted with your work and Dr. Lecky. I think it was when Dr. Lecky was interviewed by Sasha Stone sometime around 2020, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
that was a bit of a dodgy episode. But that's another story.
we've all been through some dodgy episodes. I think you know it's just continuing to get the word out, isn't it? So
yes.
So yes, Tim, you're much more qualified to introduce yourself than I am.
Sure. Well, I've prepared a presentation, so I'll just jump straight into that.
Yes, you can screen share.
Give me a second and tell me when you can see what I'm showing you.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Tim. As I've spoken, as has already been covered, I've been in and around the group for a little while, and one of my specialist subjects is explaining exactly what radiation is, why phone radiation is different to the sun, why it affects us in different ways. So I'm going to give you a presentation.
I'll tell you what, we're not getting a great sound. So if we all mute ourselves and also turn our videos off, that will give Tim more bandwidth, if that's okay. If everybody just mutes and turns their videos off.
Okay, how's this? Well, I'll just carry on, and hopefully you'll record it well, and it'll come through well. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of a an illness at the moment, which is affecting my voice. So but I'll soldier on. So yeah, I founded the Omnia Radiation Balancer product after meeting Ilya Lakisevich, who is a maverick scientist who's written about 41 papers all about the true concepts in science, from the atom to gravity to mass to E=mc², and so on. And he's got some very important information to share about what radiation is, and that might be useful to all of us to understand how to cure it, so to speak, and also, why it hurts us and harms us in such a way. So today we're going to talk about alternative truths in science, the atom, cell, and particle. I'm going to give you demonstrations of those and how we've got it wrong in our science textbooks. I'm going to ask, what is radiation? We're going to look at Walter Russell's periodic table and all his scientific body of work. Then we're going to go into why phone radiation harms us, why ionization of air, oxygen, does not happen, and unless it's very, very high frequency. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Omnia's solution for harmonizing electromagnetic fields using Deca energy, which is based on dodecahedrons, which I know is a big favorite of, I think, Catherine, and maybe we'll talk about my test results as well. So one of the big themes today is going to be light. Two of the main, influences of Dr. Lakisevich, are Tesla, who's, one of whose key phrases or sayings is everything is the light. We're going to get into what that means a bit later on. And also Walter Russell, and this is a really great quote from him: perfection of rhythm, balance, perfection of rhythm. Everything in nature is expressed by rhythmic waves of light. Every thought and action is a light wave of thought and action. If one interprets the God within one's thoughts and actions must be balanced rhythmic waves. Ugliness, fears, failures, and diseases arise from unbalanced thoughts and actions. This is important. This is important because
o atomie, o splicie atomu.
Sorry, who's speaking? I can't see. Can I also ask, if you've got any questions, just save them to the end, because I'm going to go through a lot of stuff and it's all got to flow well. So save any questions to the end and I'll answer anything then. So the reason why that quote from Walter Russell is important is because it's imbalanced waves of light that make up EMF. And we're going to get into why and what that looks like. So here's a big one to start with. Matter is an illusion. There's a guy called Mirin Dayo who stuck swords through his heart. And what he'd done is he conquered the idea that his body was actually a hologram, and so was the sword. So this is just physical demonstration of matter being an illusion. Matter is made up of light rings. And if you look at the figure 9 at the top left, you'll see empty space and then two effectively poles, magnetic poles are created. And then from the poles, electric light rings or rings of light, then basically compress into the center, and that forms the atom. And so compression is effectively a colloidal directional force, and expansion
Chodzi mówi o
out back
jak,
into the. Sorry,
radiation.
can someone stop talking? Because can you? There's someone talking, and I don't know why.
Yeah, we all need to mute out.
But can you? Okay, so compression is the material function, and expansion is the radiation function. We're going to get more into that as well. But effectively, one thing that science is airbrushing out of the whole of science, or our science textbooks airbrush out, is consciousness, because it's effectively consciousness that creates all matter. So a bit more detail about the process of the creation of an atom. Basically, you start on the left with empty space, and you see on the right, then there's two effectively magnetic poles that are created. This is annoying because, right, okay. So cold space is compressed into hot matter, and this is the process, how that happens. You see effectively these light rings, they start from the keep creating eventually the perfect sphere, which is an atom, which is basically a torus field of light. And then after that, you get the expansion phase or the radiation phase. And this is what I'm here to tell you about, is the definition of radiation, because radiation can be positive or it can be negative. The sun's radiation is positive, EMF is negative. So effectively, this will then expand out back into the cold space, and this is the form that it takes before it disappears back to zero. So that is the phase whereby hot matter is now expanded or radiated back into cold space. Now we're going to look at some proofs of that, because those were all Walter Russell's diagrams that he downloaded from a spiritual experience that he had meeting Saint Germain, it is told. So just to recap the phases of the atom: the compression of cold space into hot matter. That's effectively what our bodies are doing, okay? Every atom in our body is compressing cold space around us into hot matter. Then the expansion of the hot matter back into cold space, okay? So there's two phases, and when those two phases are in balance, we have what we call rhythmic balanced interchange. It means the compression phase is equal to the expansion phase. And that's what happens in our bodies. All our bodies are trying to maintain that rhythmic balanced interchange in every cell. But when we encounter a toxin, the rhythmic balanced interchange becomes jeopardized. One of the things happens by EMF or EMR, or magnetoelectric fields, as we would call them. Just a word about terminology: compression and expansion. Well, compression can also be charge. It can be the material, because when you compress a light ring into matter, you can see it. It is also the positive side of life, and it is also the life cycle of life. All atoms that you can see are compressed light rings that form matter that you can see. The expansion phase is actually invisible. okay? And it's the discharge phase. We're going to get into how things can charge and discharge, but for example, negative charge is just a nonsense that physics has made up. Atoms are either charging or discharging or both. Expansion is also the non-physical. So for example, most gas are expanding, oxygen and so on, with a few exceptions like hydrogen, which you can see. Expansion is also the negative cycle, it's the death cycle, and expansion is radiation. So radiation is just a phase that every atom is going through, including every atom in our bodies. And in fact, our bodies are radiating too. We know that because they give off heat, for example. And yeah, as I mentioned before, negative charge, which is always talked about in science, is a nonsense. What's happening is atoms are discharging or charging. So the key takeaway here is that expansion is the death phase of any atom. So if you have too much expansion within an atomic wave field of light or radiation, you will accelerate the death of an atom, a particle, or a cell. So an example is whenever we see any of the test shots on rats, we notice that they develop all sorts of diseases, from cancers to DNA strand breaks to infertility, and the list goes on and on. But also, you know that there's an association between mold and EMF. Why? Because mold is a decaying matter. Mold is decaying matter. And so if you hit mold with EMF, you get an exacerbation or a proliferation of that. So the particle concept, if you fill a gas tube up with, or a tube up with gas, and then you send electric current down it from a cathode on the left minus to the anode plus, then what forms inside is not balls of electrons, okay? In classic science, you would expect little pellets of electrons to be sent down the tube, but that doesn't happen. What we see is exactly what Walter Russell shows us, which is rings of light. And I'm hoping that you're going to be able to watch this. You probably won't be able to hear it, but this is what I mean. So you can see the gas tube in the middle, and basically what happens is rings of light will form, and that is the perfect example of particles of light being shown to be torus fields and not anything else. I hope you could see that, but that's basically a live experiment that anyone can do to prove that electric current moves down a tube as torus fields of light, because light is electric current. They're both one and the same thing, and that's confusing for everyone, but it's the truth. So the atom concept, we've shown here a picture, a photomicrograph of an atom which is pure tide 2.7 million times. In the center, right, you see empty space, right? This is really important because classical science tells us that the nucleus is the center of every atom, but that's not true. Instead, you see empty space, which is filled up with a magnetic still point. And what you can see on the outside here is kind of a hexagonal imprint of light. So that's how we know, well, one of the examples of how we know that this model is also correct. So that's the atom concept. The cell concept, well, this is really interesting. On the left-hand side here, you can see donuts, but these are actually pictures, photographs of blood cells taken from inside the body. Those are white donuts of light. And on the left-hand side, you've got healthy blood cells where the compression is equal to the expansion phase in each of those cells. And on the right-hand side, you've got dying cells where the balance between the compression and the expansion has disintegrated, and those are what's called sickle cells. So you see the difference between the two. One is perfectly balanced on the left. On the right, you've got imbalanced wave fields of light, which are dying. So that is the natural process of every one of our cells, is to die. And the way that happens is that effectively it radiates or expands back into the into space one last time. Okay, so just to recap and talk about the 0 point. The 0 point is a magnetic still point at the center of the ring of light or electric current. Remember, electric current is the same as light. That's why we are electrical beings, for example. That's why our heart has an electrical reading, and all our brain waves are electrical fields. So the 0 point exists at the center of every cell, and the magnetic point holds the light ring in place. So you have a still magnetic point. It's magnetic because it has 0 electrical potential. It's aligned to the geometric center of the light ring. The interconnected magnetic points of space is effectively the God field or source. Why? Because every piece of matter comes from that magnetic God field or 0 point field. Okay. The crucial thing is that it has awareness and consciousness, and the magnetic point holds the light ring in a geometric shape that ideally looks like a torus field. These torus fields of light are spinning light rings. You know, this is basically a snapshot, but if you slowed it right down, you'd see a compression phase and an expansion phase flicking on and off in rapid succession, so fast that it would almost be impossible to see frame by frame, but that's because it has high frequency. So this is electric current. You can observe the torus shape, the donut shape, and crucially, the donut shape or the torus field of light borrows power from the 0 point to move and spin itself into a torus field. Okay, so which exists at the center of the wave field of light. And then it obeys the compression sequence, which compresses it into matter, if indeed it is physical. And then the expansion sequence, which is the death cycle. So you got the life where it compresses into matter, the death cycle where it radiates or expands out into cold space. And ideally, you want to have rhythmic balanced interchange between compression and expansion, which is exactly what you see in these healthy cells on the left-hand side. So we're going to look at the incorrect model versus the correct model. The incorrect model has electrons, protons, neutrons, and a nucleus. Well, that's nonsense, because the correct model is that it's a torus field of light with empty space in the middle, and that empty space has a magnetic still point that holds that electric current in whatever shape it's going to be in, whether it's a good shape like this torus field or an balanced shape, which we're going to look at later on. So in our world, in Lackey's world, and he's written 41 papers about this, there are no electrons. There are only light rings. There is also no nucleus representing matter. There is only a light ring that compresses into matter. And NASA, if you believe what NASA says, NASA are also showing exactly what Walter Russell was talking about, because this is almost a perfect replica of this. And so that's something that they're seeing in terms of mechanics. So now we're going to have a quick look at light rings in water. So I'm going to quickly jump to, this is Lackey talking. Basically, what he does is he fills up a bowl of water and he puts a copper ring inside.
Which is water and copper ring.
So you have just a copper ring in a bowl of water.
You see, 0. It is here set on here this the middle of this ring, and the plus the thread one on the ring.
So you see here the electric current is formed. So I hope you can see here that electric current is formed when you put just a copper ring in water. What's happening there is a magnetic point forms at the center of the copper ring, and then you can measure the light rings pushing out from the magnetic point at the center of the copper ring to the outside of the copper ring. So when he measures that with his multimeter, you can see just by putting a copper ring in water, current is generated. So there's a lot more to that, and there's a lot heavier explanation of that, but I hope that you understand that that is another demonstration of how light rings can be generated. So what is frequency? So we're going to get into this now. Frequency is the speed of the oscillation between the two phases of compression and expansion. So when an atom compresses and then expands, it does that flicking on and off, on and off. And the oscillation between the on and the off and the speed at which it flicks on and off is frequency. So everyone talks about, oh, the EMF frequencies and this and the other, but frequency really is just a number. And what it's describing is the oscillation between those two phases. And all elements have a frequency, whether it's gas or a solid, for example. So now we're going to get into Walter Russell's periodic table, which you may or may not have seen, but effectively it's an alternative periodic table which lists all of the elements in a particular order. And when a certain element meets a specific temperature and pressure condition, it transforms into the next element down the table. So an example of this is oxygen. When it meets a certain temperature and pressure condition, it becomes nitrogen. So this is all basically a very, very complicated chart, but it also shows that everything acts in octaves, just like musical notes. So there's a mirror between music and this scientific model. I only want to make one point about this, which is that up until the element of carbon, which is a very important element, it's the element that we're all made of, for example, and a lot of life is made of. Up until the element of carbon, you have compressing elements, fundamentally compressing elements. Okay, and after carbon, you have fundamentally expanding elements. And when you go right down Walter Russell's table, you'll find right at the bottom things like uranium and plutonium. And those are very, very fast expanding light rings, which can do a massive amount of damage. Because if you imagine, fast light rings are effectively very, very, they're the epitome of the death cycle, right? So they'll destroy all matter in their path. So radioactive elements like plutonium and uranium are expanding light rings with super high frequency that destroy matter very quickly. Why is that important? Because EMF is low frequency expanding light rings that destroy matter slowly. We're going to get onto that. So what is phone radiation? It consists of expanding light rings of low frequency, so-called non-ionizing. We're going to come on to why non-ionizing is a misnomer. It doesn't make sense. It's not true a bit later on, but that's what classic science talks about. It says it's non-ionizing, and that's just nonsense. Therefore, what they are is death-inducing light rings that will kill things very slowly by causing imbalance in the atom or cell. I'm going to show you how a bit later on. And the higher the frequency, the faster the damage. But remember one important thing, which is this: the law of resonance. Okay, so when two potentials of the same frequency meet, they are amplified. Okay, I'm going to show you very quickly this, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me as I narrate it. But basically, you take two guitars, you put them next to each other, you pluck one of the strings, and only the other string, the corresponding string on that guitar will vibrate. That's because they're in the same frequency range. Okay, So you see two guitars put next to each other. One is the other, only the same string on the other guitar vibrates in sympathy. Okay, that's what's called resonance. Okay, so what, you might ask? Well, when an imbalanced wave field of light vibrating at, for example, 500 hertz meets a cell or atom vibrating also at 500 hertz, this is when immediate imbalance leading to the death of an atom or cell occurs. You understand? So if your body is made up of all atoms that are vibrating at 500 hertz and someone blasts it with imbalanced wave fields of light at exactly 500 hertz, that means you're going to get immediate headaches, immediate problems in your body. Okay, we all know that EMF vibrates at a very big range of frequencies, but it's just the case that our bodies have a massive range of frequencies as well, and that's one of the reasons why we all react in slightly different ways. Okay, so it follows that because we have measured adverse effects in humans, and I can show you some effects on the blood in just a second, our bodies must have frequencies that match the EMF frequencies that are being transmitted. Okay, that's just a process of deduction that we can make. And we all know that 2.4 gigahertz is particularly offensive, especially to brainwaves. Okay, so our brainwaves must be vibrating at a similar frequency to the 2.4 gigahertz that used to make up all of our Wi-Fi. And that is by design, because we all know that there's some very nasty, evil force in the world that's doing this deliberately. So I'm going to give you a graphic illustration of what a balanced field of light looks like. If you imagine those torus fields that we looked at from the top, effectively, the light field of light is just going to basically look like this. It's just going to be spinning with balance and centeredness with the 0 point at the geometric center. Okay, you can see the 0 point in the center there. And the compression phase is equal to the expansion phase. So we have balance in the cell. But in EMF, we get an imbalanced wave field of light. Okay, so the expanding light rings create a distorted field, and you can see the 0 point being dragged around all over the wave field. Okay, and when that happens, when you've got EMF that's vibrating with imbalance, you create imbalanced effects in the cell. Okay, so how do we know this? Well, sorry, I'm just going to show you a graphic illustration of this as well, which is basically when a balanced human cell, as is the case in all our bodies want to be balanced. When it meets an imbalanced radiation field from a phone or cell tower or whatever, which is characterized by an imbalanced wave field of light, the result is that the human body resonates in sympathy with that and becomes imbalanced. What that means is that there's now a lack of balance between the electric and the magnetic still point at the center of all our cells. Okay. How do we know this? Well, have a look at my live blood analysis shots, and there's like a 2-minute video of each of these types of blood. Firstly, I took a baseline of my own blood. Notice that they're all torus fields. They look like they're black torus fields, but when you take live blood analysis, it's a negative. So those black fields are actually white, and the inside being white is actually a black hole. So again, you see the torus fields. Those are really healthy cells on the left. So this is after I watched a video with holding a cell phone for 20 minutes, and all my blood lost its electrical balance. Okay, it was blasted by expanding light rings, and all of my blood cells start to become malformed. Okay, so you notice that rouleau is developing in the blood cells, which is undesirable. It's not a disease, but it's undesirable because oxygen can't get to the cell, and also the cells can't pass through the blood properly. And then immediately after doing that, when my blood was still clogged up and adhered or in adherence and had rouleau syndrome, after that, I held a cell phone in my hands for 20 minutes with my sticker on the phone, and then we recorded the results, and it went straight back to normal. with very, very limited rouleau. So that just shows you how the blood is responding in real time to exposure to EMF. And I hope you can see that it's good news on the right-hand side. That and again, there's a whole 2-minute video of the right-hand side, just so you know that I'm not selecting, you know, positive frames. The whole of the sample, pretty much 80% went back to normal just in 20 minutes of using the phone again with the Omnia radiation balancer sticker on it. But the purposes of this slide is to show you that imbalanced radiation causes imbalanced effects in our bodies. So our products, effectively, you put a sticker on a phone, it changes the vibration of the radiation, it moves the magnetic still point to the center of the wave field of light. And when that happens, it's now in resonance with the body's energy field, and that gives you protection. I'm never going to say it protects you 100%, because that would be foolish, because there's so much going on in 4G, 5G, and so on that we possibly don't even understand yet. And it's, you know, we're under attack, and we all know that. But I would say it will give you at least 80 to 90% protection, and that's good for people like me who have to use a phone for a living. And so our products are basically stickers like this that go on a phone, on a laptop. We've also got pendants that you can wear if you don't use a phone or a laptop, or if you're just walking out, you know, with your dog or something, and you've left your phone at home. So our products are based on this new energy that Dr. Lakisevich has found called Deca energy. So called because he's found or discovered a unit of energy which is shaped like a dodecahedron, and it has 12 sides on each, and on each of the 12 sides, you've got a cone of light that spins in towards the center. And what happens with those cones of light is that that magnetic point at the center of the dodecahedron is always aligned to the center. Now, this unit of energy, he claims, is to assist us with our ascension, because it's the incorruptible form of light that cannot be imbalanced. So he describes it as basically a conscious unit of energy that responds to our conscious intent. And what he does is he captures this Deca energy, programs it to basically harmonize or balance the radiation field, the wave field of light that is expanding, which we call radiation fields, but you know what I mean. And he moves that magnetic point to the center of the radiation wave via Deca energy. So Deca energy is almost like a superior form of energy that meets the EMF and brings it to balance and centeredness. And eventually, once we all start learning how to use Deca energy, it can replace the electric grid, which would be wonderful, because then we could all use our devices harmlessly. I really hope he makes some progress with that. I'm sure you do too. So now I'm going to talk about the myth of ionization, just because this was an argument that was had on the AIX email list. You're going back and forth, but I'm going to give you our take on this. Opposites, right? There's lots of things in science that have become standard expressions, but they're just not true. I've talked about negative charge earlier on. If you think about negative charge, negative is minus. To charge is to make something more, right? To increase something. How can you negatively increase something? You can't. Negative charge doesn't exist, but what does exist is charge and discharge. Another absolute howler is that opposites attract. They do not attract. There's this is all dreamt up from looking at a north and south magnet that then connect, and we think, oh, well, north and south, they're opposites, therefore opposites must attract. But that's a deception of our senses, because what's happening at the end of the south magnet is the same as what's happening at the end of the north magnet, and they're connecting. It's more complicated than that, but I'm not going to go into it right now. But opposites oppose each other. That's really important, because the fundamental principle of Walter Russell science and Lackey science is that like attracts like. The same thing attracts the same thing. We all know this because we are attracted to things we like. It's really that simple. So I'm going to give you a brief explanation of electrolysis, and you can find out just how much mental masturbation is sorry to be rude, but just how much rubbish is talked by the scientific community to try and explain what they see in an electrolysis experiment. So when we apply electric potential to water by immersing 2 electrodes in it and connecting them to a DC electric source, there is a so-called dissociation of water into ions. Again, not only does ions not exist, electrons don't exist either. You just have compressing or expanding rings of light. So H+ ions and O- ions are what it is determined that they're dissociated into. Okay. The explanation in our textbook says hydrogen loses 1 electron and becomes a proton, H+ ion, and O takes 2 lost electrons and becomes an O- ion, a double minus. Now, according to the Coulomb law, that opposites attract each other. Our textbooks say that a negative electrode, the cathode, attracts hydrogen's plus ion because negative attracts positive. The hydrogen ion takes 1 electron from the cathode, becomes a neutral atom, and is then released in the cathode area into the air. According to the Coulomb law, the O- ion is attracted to the positive electrode, the anode, where it loses 2 electrons, becomes the neutral O atom, and is then released in the anode area into the air. Again, negative supposedly attracts positive. Now, I did have a diagram of this, but I'm afraid I just haven't had time to show it to you, to put it in the slide deck. But you can see that that's a very, very complicated explanation of what's going on based on the wrong concept of the atom. Remember, we looked at the atom with a nucleus, proton, neutron, electron, right? This is what's really happening. When you see an electrolysis experiment, this is a tub of water, okay? You can see with the blue stuff, you submerge a minus electrode and a plus electrode, the cathode and the anode, and you charge it up with electric current. The hydrogen is positive. We know that because we looked at Walter Russell's periodic type table of elements, and hydrogen is above carbon, so it's a compressing element and it's positive, and oxygen is below carbon and it is minus, and therefore the minus is attracted to the cathode, and then hydrogen is released at the top of the cathode. The hydrogen, which is plus, is attracted to the plus electrode, the anode, and then oxygen is released at the top of the anode. It's literally like attracts like, same attracts same, and you don't have this crazy explanation of ions, exchanging each other and changing, and oxygen changing its state, and so on. So that's why we know that there's no ions. The relevance of that is that we're always talking about whether radiation is ionizing or non-ionizing, right? And we all know that the non-ionizing label is false. So what is really happening? Well, I've explained it earlier on. When balanced light rings, such as the cells in our body, are bombarded with imbalanced light rings, the balance within our cells gets disrupted and malformed. And that over time, over a long time, it has to be said, over a long time, not just over a month or over a year, but over 5 years, leads to very bad stuff, cancers and all sorts. So to summarize, even the word EMF, electromagnetic field, is wrong. Every atom, every piece of matter is a wave field of light that is either compressing or expanding or both. The cells in our body are compressing. The radiation that comes into our phones is expanding. You can't see the EMF, but you can see our bodies, for example, which are compressing into matter. Secondly, when balanced light rings of the same frequency, this is really important, of the same frequency meet expanding light rings, the balanced light rings, for example, our cells or a tree, become imbalanced. And we saw that in the blood experiment that I showed you earlier on, and we can also see it in all the trees dying that are sat next to the 5G towers. Okay, there are no ions that are exchanged. So ionizing is a misnomer. There's no negative charge. There's no electrons. There's no ionization, and opposites do not attract. We just have light rings. That's the only thing on this plane of existence. And the light rings can be huge, as we saw in the NASA picture, or they can be tiny and minuscule, as we can see in our blood cells. As above, so below. And so-called ionization is effectively the destruction of a light ring. Okay, that's what it is. It's the destruction or the decay of a light ring via imbalance between the magnetic and the electric. And one more point that I wanted to make, which is that everyone's going on about how 60 gigahertz 5G will destroy oxygen. Well, I don't think that's true, because oxygen is a higher frequency than even 60 gigahertz. It's very difficult to find out what the frequency of oxygen actually is, but Lackey tells me it's way higher than 60 gigahertz. So unless someone can actually prove that the air around a 5G tower is destroyed and the oxygen molecule is so what happens with the oxygen molecule if it's exposed to extremely high, fast expanding light rings? And bear in mind that oxygen is close to the sun, for example, which has very, very fast high frequency light rings, then effectively it will evaporate. So it'll evaporate and be destroyed. So unless someone can prove that around a 5G tower, our science says that that's not possible. But it does require people to understand what the actual frequency of oxygen is, which is actually very difficult to put your finger on. And that is it from me.
Thank you very much, Tim. That is very
Pleasure.
fascinating and very simply, for those of us, or much more simply than we might find in a book or something like that. So it's really, really useful. Have we got any questions for Tim? Just unmute if you have.
Yeah, I've got a question. I didn't quite get the you know, the cathodes in the pool of water where
Yes.
oxygen was separated and hydrogen was separated. Yeah, that. I just want you to go through that again. That's all
What
right.
I suggest is that we stay muted until it's your turn to ask your question. So if you put your hands up, then we can just go along the line and answer.
Sure. So I'm just going to give you Lackey's explanation for this, which is that within water is H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen is negative. The hydrogen is positive. It's a compressing gas. One of the clues there is you can see hydrogen. You can't see oxygen. So the hydrogen is a positive or a plus element, and that gets attracted to the plus anode. Okay, so that means that the oxygen separates from the hydrogen there, and the oxygen then rises to the top of the cathode. On the opposite, you've got the oxygen, which is minus, is attracted to, so what we're saying is like attracts like, not opposites attract. Like attracts like, the minus element, oxygen, is attracted to the minus cathode, and that means that the hydrogen separates itself from the H2O in that around that area, and you see the bubbles of hydrogen come to the top of the water. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, I get it. Where does it separate? For instance, if the oxygen is attracted to its like, which is negative, or expanded, I guess. Why does hydrogen release? Because it's trying to get away? Is that what it is?
It just, because like attracts like, it's like a magnetism, right? So you put expanding light rings or compressing light rings or whatever into water, which is charged either negative, sorry, no, not negatively charged, but discharging light rings or charging light rings, then effectively the hydrogen is going to gravitate towards the charging light rings, the plus,
Yeah.
and the discharging light rings from the cathode, the oxygen is going to gravitate towards that. When it basically draws the oxygen to it on the cathode, for example, hydrogen's released at the top, and you can actually burn the hydrogen at the top. There's an experiment that you can do just like this, where you effectively, just at the top of the cathode, you put a cigarette lighter or whatever, or a match, and the hydrogen bursts up in flames. So that's what happens there. But we're just using this as an explanation to show how science is actually really simple. You know, it's been made incredibly complex, and we've been misled by a lot of science in our textbooks. But really, it's simple. You know, like attracts like, plus attracts the hydrogen, and then oxygen, which is the minus, is released at the top of the anode, and vice versa.
Okay, thanks.
Those of us who haven't got that yet, I'm sure if we listen to the recording again a few times, it might sink in. Charlie, did you finish your question, or did you have another one? You're mute. Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Tim. No, thanks so much
Hi.
for the presentation. Excellent. You know, I've been using Omnia stickers for my kids, all the devices, my devices. They're absolutely fantastic. And what's brilliant about them is that they're affordable, which is excellent compared with some other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I you know, it's only a sticker, but that's the magic of it, is that, you know, we can make it affordable. You know, I buy them for £5.50, which, to be honest with you, is an absolute rip-off. But I try and sell them for, you know, double, if not double and a half. You know, that's about as good as I can get. You know, as low as I can go, really. So thank you. I'm really glad you're having a positive experience. I really appreciate your feedback on that. But yeah, when I met Lackey, he showed me his products, and I did muscle testing with everyone. We were at a conference that was run by a guy called Michael Tellinger. You may have heard of him.
Know about it. Yeah.
And Michael was very good friends with Lackey, and Lackey was giving a presentation. And halfway through Lackey's presentation, which was all about Deca energy, he said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I've got the solution to all the radiation problems in the world." And I thought, well, that's quite a big claim. So I went up to him afterwards and said, "What have you got?" And he showed me these stickers, and I was just like, "They're just stickers, you know. Where's the magnet? Where's the crystal? Where's the, you know, where is the thing?" But this is conscious technology that we're talking about, which is actually the next phase of technology we're going to go into. It's the antidote to kind of AI, if you like, and we need it because you know, otherwise our masters are going to, you know, or the people running the show are going to drive us to you know, despair, really. So if you can imagine that there's this unit of energy within our atmosphere now that we can download and start using to you know, run the electricity grid or replace the electricity grid, then that's very positive. So anyway, yeah, thanks very much. I mean, I basically took his stickers and started muscle testing everyone at the conference. I was like, wow, these things really work. So then I was like, okay, I need to do some testing on this, and you know, not just rely on muscle testing. And we did some water crystal photography and live blood analysis, and also heart rate variability. And a lot of people tell me that ours is the only product that works, which is
you've done
very flattering.
It's brilliant. You've done you know, you've done work with Oliver, haven't you? And you
I have, yeah. And Oliver's had a bad rap from Nicholas recently because he's been accused of telling Nicholas that my products don't work. But that was actually an autonomic response tester who was saying that in her tests she felt that it was better if you had 2 stickers on than 1. So Oliver was actually saying it doesn't give you complete protection unless you have 2 on them, I don't think, according to that one modality. But, you know, me and Oliver are friends, and we can have honest, open discussions. And to be honest with you, if he ever said, I found something that shows that your product doesn't work, I'd have very serious, you know, questions. You know, I'd consider, if I thought it was true, I'd consider not continuing.
That's
Or
important,
changing
isn't
my
it? I mean, on this group, we've always had honest and open discussions. It's been one of the most important things. And, you know, it's great. I remember buying your stickers, you know, when you first came on and you talked about them. And I was thinking, I can't find a single sticker now. And I think it's because all the devices that had the stickers on have died. And so the stickers died with them, if you know what I mean, because you can't get them off.
They used to be really badly made, and I had a go at Lucky for ages. And now we've got stickers that never perish, because
Oh, that sounds good.
the thing is, he's a scientist and he just didn't care about the quality of the stickers. And I kept saying to him, go and get some better stickers, but he just wouldn't. So for at least 2 years, we've had stickers that don't bleed. So, well, at least a year and a half anyway. That don't bleed.
That was my second question. If the sticker, as you say, bleeds, or the actual image completely goes, does it not work?
Still works, but when there's no color left, this is what he tells me, when there's no color left, then they won't work, because there's something about the interaction between the glue, the paper, and the dye where the decker is kind of
okay. Can you put your link website on the chat, so we can so I can buy some more?
Yeah, fantastic. Any more questions, Charlie, or you?
No, that's it. Just thanks so much, Tim. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So next person is Michael or Amanda. I'm not sure.
Hi, it's me. Yeah, basically a couple of things. One, just very simple practical thing, which is that I use a portable ionizer, which apparently protects against EMFs and also is good when I'm in somewhere polluted. So I'm kind of trying to get my head around how does that fit with this. But before you answer that, I also want to say that on a sort of philosophical level, spiritual level, if you like, surely, but I often think when people talk about, free energy and how we're going to have this non-harmful energy in one way or another, do we not have to, doesn't humanity have to have evolved to a point where it won't just be used again for corporate greed and all the rest, and we'll be back where we started? So it's kind of like, how do we ensure, that we do actually move forward? I mean, it might be an impossible question to answer, but it's just a thought.
Well, I mean, my first question back to that would be like, who's measuring? Who's measuring how evolved we are as humanity and everything else? I think it will come when we're ready for it. Obviously at the moment you've got this almost like a split in the world where half the world's getting worse, in my view, and half the world is rapidly getting better. And so what I feel is that the scene is set for it to happen. I'd love it if it was Decker Energy. As you know, there's many people who've found ways of producing electric current freely, and a lot of them have ended up at the bottom of a river. So you're right, we have to have governments that actually want to run things honestly and towards the best, to the betterment of humanity, rather than impose all these filthy net zero conditions on us, lying about CO2 and so on. I mean, that's my answer to your question. No one can really answer that question. If someone comes up with free energy tomorrow, it means we're ready.
Right. The thing is, because also, I mean, I kind of think, what kind of life are we heading towards if we're all permanently, on our phones and all the rest, all that stuff, as opposed to interacting personally one-to-one? I mean, this is probably too big a subject to go into in this meeting, but it's just something that I often think about. It's like, okay, yeah, it would be great to have phones that are not harmful, obviously, but we still have to use them differently. Our society has to be different. I noticed that Rosaline said, is it possible to stop screen sharing, presumably so that if you finished your presentation, so that we can see each other, I imagine. But yes, in terms of the portable ionizer, I've kept my camera off, but I'll put it on for a second. So yes, I'm wearing this, which is supposed to create, gosh, I can never remember if it's negative or positive ions.
Up in the mountain.
Yeah, negative. Okay.
Well, anyway. Know that neither exist.
So what is it doing?
So it's creating either a charging light field or a discharging light field, or both. What do you do with it? Well, muscle test it. That's the simplest way of getting your body, or dowsing, if you know what dowsing is.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are lot of people come up to me and say, oh, I've got this on my phone, I've got that on my phone. I don't know whether it works or not, but your body does. So if you blind test yourself with it, you know, where, you know, if you can do that. If not, just don't blind test yourself. Sometimes the brain does need to be involved in a muscle test. But for those who don't know how to do it, one of the ways is just like this. You know, you pull down on your arm, see how strong you are, then put your phone in your hand, see if your arm gives weight. It normally does. And then put your solution in your hand with the phone, and then see if your body's strong. And I know from muscle testing my products that it works well, and the body always returns to strength. But see whether your ionizer works. I mean, read the spec of it as well, because it's quite funny, because I look at competitor products, and because they don't really know what radiation fields are, they're taking the classic descriptions from our textbooks. I think to myself, well, how can their products work? And then I read their description, and it's just a whole load of mumbo jumbo. That said, some of them do work, apparently. You know, Ollie tells me that he's tested a new one that's working quite well. That's fine. You know, it's like some of them are gonna, you know, there's some of them have got to work. All I know really about is mine.
Some of us wear these pendants from
Those light
Oliver.
cells. Yeah.
They're what are they called? Oronocos.
Oh yeah.
You must
Well,
have seen
I mean,
them.
Oliver's done testing as well, you know,
Yes.
with ART and other things.
Right.
So look, there's find the product that's right for you. And like I said, your body will tell you what the right product is.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. So Rosaline, you're next.
Hello, hi. Thank you so much. That was a very interesting presentation.
pleasure.
So I'm very, very lucky because I live I live across the road from four 5G towers.
Yeah.
Not one,
Yeah.
but two. And of
Wow.
course, I was very ill. My dog had fits. Anyway, I've got my house now completely hardwired, and beautiful shungite throughout my house with silver and fluorites, etc. I also wear it too, and my house feels absolutely brilliant.
Great.
So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, if I mean, you know, right? I mean, you know, and the dog knows as well. The dogs are very, very sensitive, and if the dog's reacting better and you're reacting better, then you know that's something you've done. The problem that we have, right, all of us, is that you can't take a meter to a radiation field and go, oh look, it's completely imbalanced, right? The magnetic and the electric are all distorted, and you know that video that I showed you, where the light field was basically, you know, jagging around. There is nothing that can show us that radiation fields are imbalanced, destructive light fields like that, right? All we have is the body. So if your body is strong every time you're holding a phone, and if your body's doing well, it's the only test that you can do at home for free. The other one that I know of, which is really good, is a chiropractor who basically stands behind someone's head and moves it to the right and moves it to the left and sees how much flexibility you've got in your neck, and then hold a phone and do the same thing. Because basically your neck will just lock up and you won't be able to move it. It's quite a, you know, I used that video because this guy was wearing a smartwatch, and the guy goes, right, let's have a look at this. And he can only move his head to about there. So right, take the smartwatch off. And then he's basically all the way across like that. And he was like, oh my God, you know. So these are obvious tests. I've been on this call before, and I said, listen, what you're lacking, what everyone's lacking, is that smoking gun thing, where you go to the councils or whatever, and you say, look at this. We've done 50 blood studies, and every single one of them showed a distortion in the blood, just like I showed you earlier on. We've done 50. You could do 100. Just do 100 controlled studies and say, look at that. Whatever you've been told by anyone, you know, blah, blah, the blood is reacting badly. And you have, and then it's on them to dispute it or to take it down, right? And we know they've got enough money to do that if they want to, but you know, you're putting the frighteners up them with real evidence. And I did start that project with some people, but it got a bit distracted because everyone quite rightly said that blood changes from every 5 minutes. So it's difficult to actually get really, foolproof blood results across 100 people. I personally still think it can be done, but there was a little bit of doubt in the group, and I'm running a business, so I just went off and kept running my business. So we didn't finish it, basically.
It's a good thing to have started, though. Yeah, fantastic.
Sorry, if I may also add, I have got like shungai. I've put them literally, they're like almost like muffins, and I've got one by each monopole, and I've got 2 large pots outside my door, because that is where the worst thing is, and I've got 2 there as well. And then when you come in my house, that's when it's really bad, because I've actually had it as a fair here who's checked it all, and it was really, really bad. I've got a massive, well, it's not massive, but I've got a sphere sitting on a base with shungite and silver, and that has made a massive difference. So I must say it has. But my other question is, there's always, where I live in Brighton, there's masses of seagulls, and the seagulls are always sitting on these monopoles. Now,
I don't get it. Yeah, I don't understand it either.
how are they still alive? And it's all trees around it. They're still green. So
How are they still alive? Well, I always give the example of Keith Richards, who's also still alive. You can put a ton load of toxins in your body and still be alive. Why pigeons are attracted to it, I'm not sure really, but they do seem to be. You're right, because where I used to live in London, there was a cell tower right opposite me on the top of a block of flats, and the birds used to sit on that all the time as well. So I don't know whether it's a spark, a little electric buzz that they get out of it or something. I don't know, but it's not good for them. It's not good for us, not good for them. But it's not going to kill them, right? It's, I don't know. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories, where all these dead birds in the street, it's going to harm them, but it's not going to kill them immediately, unless they genuinely are, a la Mark Steele weapons that you can turn on and off and blast everything and everything dies. I don't think they are, but make of that what you will.
I mean, I know Mark Steele, I've spoken to him a few times, and he's very concerned about me living here. But when I was concerned and worried about it, I was really ill. When I actually sort of got over the fear and dealt with it in the positive way, all I can say is I feel fine. But it would be interesting to have blood tests, and I don't know where I could get those. Can you recommend anywhere?
Yeah, there's
I
lots
used
of
a
people
guy
who
who's
just
now living
podcast.
in.
Sorry. Yeah.
I used to use a guy who's now living in Kent, I think. So he's moved a little way away from, it's really hard to find people who will do it, because you know what it's like in the medical mafia. No one wants to step out of line, right? No one wants to come and say, oh yeah, I'll do an independent test that shows that radiation is harming you. You know what I mean? But I'm sure, like Catherine's just mentioned, someone who does it. Yeah, so does Harry Rhodes. My guy is in Kent. Kent's not that close to Brighton, but if you fancied, visiting or whatever, then yeah, I'm sure people in the group know people as well.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Sue, you're muted still, Sue.
Sorry, I went off the frame.
We can see Anne there in the background too, in the camper van.
In the background, yeah.
Hi.
So, hi, Tim. Thanks for that. That was interesting. Now, I noticed that you got your sticker on the key pad of your laptop. I've got mine underneath.
Right.
Does it make any difference?
No, not really. As long as it's on the base, because if it's on the screen, that's not where all the EMF comes in, right? So
no, it's not on the screen. It's just underneath. Underneath
is good, but you're probably better off putting a little sticker on top of that, just so that it doesn't rub and wear off. So
on top of what?
On top of the sticker.
Oh, one sticker.
So yeah, just some sellotape or something, just to make sure it doesn't scratch or the colors rub out or anything like that,
Okay, and is there any advantage at all of a second sticker on the same piece of equipment?
People are telling me that there are advantages of that. I have 2 on my laptop just because I can. But look, we know that what's coming is 6G, 7G, and whatever else G. I started this like testing people and getting really good results. But what I know is that the frequencies in the imbalanced wavefield are becoming more and more and more imbalanced, and more kind of targeting, because you know what Barry Trower says about his army tests, where they use certain frequencies to hit certain organs, and they found that, I'm pretty sure that all of that technology is being employed in the new systems that are going out just to weaken us, because the bad guys are in control, right? So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to test every single thing, and some people are saying that they're feeling that 2 on a phone is a good idea.
I suppose that's something else that you could muscle test.
Again, yes, absolutely.
But sellotape is fine on top of a sticker.
Yeah, absolutely. You
And
can get those nice round stickers, from a post office or whatever, but it depends on how much you want to do that.
And
In fact, I've got some. I could send some to you in the post if you want. They're really easy.
Are they like round sellotape stickers? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it does matter which way round you have the sticker, doesn't it?
Well, it's got to be stuck on the device, but in terms of what it looks like, no, not really. It's
it doesn't. Oh, good.
No. Well, no. I mean, like you're talking about which way the sticker looks. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that doesn't matter. No.
It doesn't matter. Oh, that's good.
I always put it, so you can see here, that's the way I do it.
No, I can't.
Because the whole thing about Omnia is, my branding is that we're going from orange, which is dangerous, to kind of aquamarine blue, which is safety, right? So I always like to go left to right.
I don't know whether other people can see it, but I can't. It's not in the frame. Lower. That's it. Yeah. Orange to
so I always go orange on the left to aquamarine on the right.
Right.
And the idea is that this is protected. This is the radiation field. It's just, there's not a lot of branding I can do with an O, but that's what we decided to do.
Okay, cool. So I think we'll make we'll make this the last question, because I'm just thinking time's getting on, and I was going to talk about the dodecahedron as well.
Yeah.
So Asif, last question.
Yeah, I wanted to know what's actually on the sticker. It's not just the colors, is it? There must be some other coating or that does something or not.
Well, so here's the mystery, because Lackey is quite a suspicious person. And even though we've been working for about 4 years, he still doesn't trust me. But I don't know how he gets the Deca energy into the sticker. I know he does because I test the stickers and they work.
So is there a dodecahedron? Sorry, was there a dodecahedron shape embedded in this sticker somehow? Or...
Absolutely. So the new unit of energy that he's discovered is something he calls Deca energy. He's written books about it, about how he discovered it and how he started experimenting with it and everything else. The main advantage for the whole of the human race is that it responds to human intent, conscious human intent. So we can program it, like, for example, I've got an Omnia pendant on, and I can speak to this Omnia pendant and ask it to do things, right? So it's an interactive energy field that can help you. And if you, with whatever help you need, but he puts his conscious instructions to effectively change the vibration of the EMF so that magnetic point is absolutely at the center of the wave field of light, right? Because you mentioned, beforehand, I was saying that in EMF, it jags around. The magnetic point just basically, there's that distortion that between the electric and the magnetic. So he puts the magnetic point directly in the center of the field, because that Deca energy unit is absolutely balanced and will never lose its balance because of the cones of light that spin in. Yeah, That was
So
on
he-
one of my slides. If you
so-
want to have a look at it again
Okay.
on the replay.
So he imprints the Decker thing. Is that a physical imprint on it or some intent on it? Or
Yeah, that's yeah.
which one?
It's a physical imprint. Sorry, no, there's not. So here's the thing. I can't answer that. He won't answer that to me. So I can't answer that. But what I believe is that he creates an energy field and passes the stickers through it.
Okay.
That's what I believe.